Happy Monday. It's the DAZN Boxing Show. I go by the name of Barak.
And I'm Barak, the boxing bully.
I'm happy to be here, Barak. A lot to talk about. Two big fights happened over the weekend, and there's another huge fight that is supposed to happen. Let's hope it does. We'll get into that, and that's Jake Paul, Tommy Fury. Also, big Artur Beterbiev win. But first, we'll get into Alexis Rocha and his knockout win here on the opening bell. Barak, interesting fight, to say the least, or I should say interesting opponent in Ashy. Big win for Rocha. I didn't know what to think of this guy. I mean, tough as nails, but the lack of defense was surprising, almost amateur-like, novice-like. But then when he started throwing shots, they were hard shots in the pocket, aggressive, a lot of heart. But I didn't understand his style in this guy. But I guess he showed it.
I'm talking about George
Ashy.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm talking about Ashy. As soon as the fight started, just to touch on just to fight the X's and O's, this guy was very open defensively, like weird, kind of jittery movements with his chin up in the air. But then at times in the pocket, he was throwing good, hard shots. So I guess it was an awkward opponent, to say the least. Alexis Rocha weathered the storm and landed, scored a couple of knockouts. The last one was a vicious knockout, but had knocked him down early in the fight. The question of the night was, Barak, is Alexis Rocha ready for Terence Crawford? Because as you know, that's the talk.
Ready for Terence Crawford. Hardly anybody in the world is ready for Terence Crawford. That's a tough question to answer. No, it's not a tough question to answer. It's just a tough question for Alex Rocha. He got beat by Rashidi Ellis. So to say that he's ready for Terence Crawford, that would be crazy to say. But can we say that once a fighter gets beat, he goes back to the drawing board and he gets better? Because Alex Rocha does have 6 victories since that Rashidi lost in 2020. He has been looking good, and one of those wins is Blair Cobb, which is a good prospect coming up. So can we say that he's gotten better? Maybe. What I usually say is you got to go back and fight the guy that beat you if that guy is still active. That's what I usually say. That will show us for sure if you're better. But I have seen certain things different in Rocha. Styles make fights, though. He didn't fight another guy like Rashidi Ellis. But I have seen guys who I have seen some kind of difference in him in his style of fighting. But to say he's ready for Terence, I definitely don't want to say that. Now, I do want to congratulate him on his victory no matter what. Congratulations, Rocha. But also, I want to point out he was fighting a smaller guy. He was fighting a guy who was
went up in weight.
Fights at 135, fights at 140. Tego beat him back in the day. You know what I'm saying? So this is not such a super skillful guy, but he's a tough guy. And one thing I do want to point out, even though he was a little bit smaller, he's never been stopped before. So you got to give Rocha the credit for that. I think Rocha kind of looked sharp. Was he getting hit? Yes. But I still think his punch placement was precise.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think we have to take into consideration that this guy was a smaller guy and did lose to a guy like Tego. And you always say it all the time, as far as somebody being ready, right? When it comes to big fights, we don't know if somebody's ready or not, right? If you're at that level and you want those big fights and it makes sense, whether it's a mandatory, the sanctioning bodies order it, at that point, let the fights happen, especially when you got a guy like Terence. I know people are complaining. People just want to see Terence Crawford against Errol Spence and even Boots Ennis.
Yeah.
Those fights, ideally, we want to see all of those fights. But a guy like Terence, at his age now, he wants to stay busy. He wants to stay active. And I do think
he wants the biggest fights.
Right, he wants the biggest fights, Barak. But look, we all saw him on social media in the Golden Boy office. That's when the chatter started. Oh, is Terence Crawford signing with Golden Boy? We saw him with Bernard Hopkins as well. That doesn't necessarily mean that he's signing with him. Right now, Terence Crawford is a free agent, just as Canelo Alvarez is, right? So that leaves more options open. He knows that he's dealt with a lot of stuff regarding the Errol Spence fight and the PBC. So he's leaving doors open to have other fights. I think Alexis Rocha is a credible opponent. To your point, nobody might be ready for Terrence Crawford. I'm not upset at the fight. That's pretty much essentially what I want to say.
I don't agree with that because Alexis Rocha didn't beat anybody on that level to say that he's ready. Now,
I didn't say ready. I said credible.
I don't even think he's credible. That's what I was about to
Fair enough. That's your opinion.
I was gonna say I like Rocha, but I'm saying guys like what you named earlier, Ennis and Ortiz, I think those guys deserve the shot. It's not about being ready, because ready we don't know.
Exactly.
Nobody looks like they can beat Terrence Crawford, but then again, people think Ennis can beat Terrence Crawford.
But Barak, who deserves a shot?
Guys like Ennis.
Ennis is going in.
Guys like Thurman. Guys like, Spence obviously is the top guy in that division.
Right, but why does Ugas deserve? Ugas is coming off a big
beat Manny Pacquiao, and he's
right, and then he lost after that.
Listen, he's already but who did he lose to?
If a guy accomplishes a certain amount in his career, regardless of when it happened, he's earned big fights.
What the heck are you? That's the
what I'm saying is because he beat Manny Pacquiao a few years ago, that means he's earned a fight with Terrence Crawford today. I'm asking you.
And he had a close, very, very close fight with Sean Porter. He was a champion, bro. Hello, he's already at that level. That's what I'm trying to say. So we can't compare Ugas to Rocha. Rocha hasn't even beat a top guy yet.
I'm not comparing him.
Wait, Rocha hasn't even beat the B+ guys yet.
All right, but remember, Ugas is a PBC guy. So let's put that into play.
What does that have to do with what we're talking about?
Meaning that it might not be, even though he might deserve a fight.
That's neither here nor there.
But that's what we're talking about. We're talking about options for Terrence Crawford. Options
that deserve it. I'm just talking about guys that deserve it. I'm just saying that Rocha, yes, it's scary. If Bud is going with Golden Boy, then people are thinking Ortiz. I was never thinking Rocha, not yet.
I got you.
That's credible yet. He just fought Avanesan, and Avanesan is on that maybe a little higher level than Rocha. So it's like, he gets destroyed for that. It's like Floyd. When Floyd was the best fighter in the world, you couldn't even fight guys with like Berto, who was a very, very good fighter without getting criticized.
I get your point. So maybe
you have to be really good.
But listen,
Terrence Crawford, people not to complain.
People are going to complain regardless, considering the fact that he's had trouble with PBC making an arrow fight. It doesn't make me believe that it's going to be easier to make fights with Thurman or Ugas. So we talking about a guy that needs options and needs to fight somebody. But let's move on. Look, he's on a level that arguably nobody's on in boxing today. Speaking of levels, we went into the Artur Beterbiev Anthony Yarde fight assuming that he would stop Yarde. Some people felt a little earlier. I felt it might happen a little earlier. Anthony Yarde surprised me with his heart and effort in there because he showed vulnerability. I feel like Beterbiev showed vulnerability, but that's not the first time. He's been stopped. He's been dropped by guys like Johnson. He's a guy that gets hit. Because he beat Joe Smith the way he did, I think people forgot about, hey, this guy can get hit. Marcus Brown was landing shots. He's not the best defensive fighter in the world, but he was able to beat Joe Smith so easily, we forgot about that. But this fight reminded us, hey, this guy is vulnerable. And ultimately, Barak, I'm saying all that to say, you know what we're thinking. We're thinking Bivol, Demetrius Bivol. First off, congrats to Beterbiev and shouts to Anthony Yarde for showing big effort. His corner, they care about him. They wanted to keep him safe, and he stopped the fight. Great fight. Did Arthur show enough to say that he's the best light heavyweight in the world? I don't think so. What do you think?
I think he has to be called the best light heavyweight in the world because of what he has. He's the lineal champion. He beat the man that beat the man. And he has 3 belts. So I'm never gonna take that spot away from him. Right. Years ago, I've been saying Bivol, in my opinion, is the best light heavyweight in the world, skillfully. That's just my opinion. But I'm not gonna say that Bivol deserves that #1 spot. No. Beterbiev earns that spot. If people have him on the pound for pound list, I'm not mad at you. The guy is super, super dominant. He's super dominant. Shout out to Yarde for giving it all he got. Like I said before, I never get predictions, but I did say he had a puncher's chance. And in that 5th round, he rocked Beterbiev and just couldn't get him out. Couldn't even get him down. You know, but he did show that he can punch hard enough to hurt him. I think some of his punches were arm punches because he was leery about getting hit.
Right.
You know? And maybe he was a little bit nervous. Maybe the stage was big. Maybe you're fighting a killer, you know, but eventually he warmed up.
And he showed heart.
But, you know, I think it was just a different skill level. I think Yarde is just a different skill level, but he gave it all he's got and he did hurt him. So, yes, he's vulnerable, but he's always been vulnerable. But he punched so damn hard.
Interesting enough, you know, you say that we have to call him the best light heavyweight in the world, and I totally agree with you, even though you and I both have been saying that Bivol is the best light heavyweight in the world. We still don't even have Beterbiev on our pound for pound list, and we have Bivol high on the list. But I guess it's because of the level of opponents that he's beaten. But people would argue that nevertheless, the only way to find out is if the fight actually happens and Bivol and Beterbiev happens. Speaking of fights happening, there's a face-off earlier that night over there in the UK. Finally, Barak, Jake Paul versus Tommy Fury. Looks like the fight is signed. You know, there's been times where fights supposedly been signed and announced and they didn't happen. We all know that this fight was already set and Tommy Fury had issues, couldn't travel to New York. Now the fight looks like it's going to happen on that side of the pond. So I like the fight. I'm happy that for those that think that Tommy Fury, because he comes from a fight family, he does, and he has more experience than Jake, they can finally see Jake is fighting a professional boxer, even though he's already tried to fight this guy, tried to fight Hasim Rahman Jr. So finally he's going to get that opportunity. Does the fight actually happen, or do we get another crazy outcome and Jake is going to need a replacement opponent at the end of the day?
I think the fight happens. Coming from a fight family, that's cool. Floyd Mayweather Jr. has a brother, you know.
Right.
But you don't know him. So just like Tommy Fury, half brothers or whatever, but still brother nonetheless.
Right.
And you come from a fighting family, yes, but that doesn't help you in the ring sometimes. Right. Now, I think the fight's going to happen. I think, and it was twice actually, that this fight didn't happen. I think if it doesn't happen, it's not going to be Jake Paul's fault.
No.
He's trying to fight everybody. It's not going to be his fault. I got to give him credit now. I don't take credit away from Jake Paul anymore, like everybody does. But I do think it's going to happen. I think Tommy wants it. It was funny to me how they was like, somebody must have told Tommy, hey, you got to do a face-off. He takes his shirt off. Like a real face-off during the weigh-in. Like, that was kind of strange. You're in the ring with your shirt off. But it's all good. I'm glad that Jake has the balls to go to that country and fight a man in his hometown. Because listen, what if Jake doesn't knock him out?
Right.
You got to go to the scorecards. That's dangerous.
That's going to be tough.
Out in the UK. So you got to give him credit for that. And Tommy Fury has showed us, because a lot of people saying that he's scared. I'm like, no, he had issues. Right. Tommy Fury is showing us so far that he was never scared and he always wanted this.
And to be fair, I do think Tommy would probably pose as the biggest threat for Jake so far with his list of opponents. Sorry, I did forget about Silva. My apologies on that. I think Silva is definitely, even at his age, but if you're talking about youth, obviously Tommy brings that to the table. Size also, Tommy's a pretty big guy. But nevertheless, really quick, Barak, even though we feel Anderson Silva is a bigger threat than Tommy Fury, people are still not calling him a boxer, foolish enough, not knowing that he's a much better boxer than Tommy Fury. But this is the fight that people wanted. The face-off was intense. We always like that leading up to a fight. There was shoving, pushing. These guys don't like each other. I do believe the fight is going to happen. I want to be there front center. I'm looking forward to the outcome of that fight. And I'll say it now, I'm picking Jake Paul. All right? early prediction.
Just be fiending to make these predictions.
Early prediction. All right, look, folks, that's our show for today. Hope you guys enjoy. Peace and love. Stay safe. We are out of here.